Good morning, my friend. Grab yourself a cup of coffee. Drop me a note in the comments. I will be right with you. Good morning, Anne. Happy Monday, my friends. What is going on in your world? Happy 2021. That is just wild, hey? Thinking about the fact that we are in 2021. Welcome to Men Up with Mike. My name is Mike Cameron, and I will be your host. Today, we are going to have a little bit of a conversation around a bunch of different things. In particular, I want to talk a little bit about goal setting, and does it actually work? Does goal setting actually work for the majority of people? What are some of the trials, tribulations, challenges that we run into with goal setting, and how can we do things that are maybe a little bit more productive? And how the heck are you, my friend? It is super good to see you here. I'm having a little bit of trouble publishing to LinkedIn, so it keeps popping up a little note for me. But again, drop me a note in the comments. Tell me where you are watching. Actually, I can tell where you're watching. So for the most part, I can tell where you're watching. If you are watching on my personal feed, I don't see comments here. So let me just pull that up while I ramble and let you guys get settled in. And then, honest to goodness, we will dive right in. I promise you. So before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items I want to touch on. Hey, Aaron, how you doing, brother? Are you not out working this morning? I thought you were out working this morning, laying one stone at a time. Good stuff. And so, a couple of housekeeping items. We have a new, sorry, I'm just looking over here. Yeah, it's not coming up where I thought it would be coming up. So anyways, you're here, I'm here. Let's do this thing. So what I want to talk about today, again, is goal setting. Does it actually work? And what are some of the challenges with them? And how can we maybe set a new paradigm that works a little more effectively? And I want to talk to you about why I stopped setting goals and why you may want to consider doing the same thing. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, especially when we're coming into 2021. It's a new year. We're supposed to sit down and map out our resolutions for the year. I realized I forgot to turn down the volume on the music. Got that covered now. But one of the things, there's about 5 or 6 different reasons why I stopped setting goals. And I want to run through those quickly this morning. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the future of this show, how I'm going to carry things forward in 2021, how this show aligns with what we're going to talk about here. I was going to say goals, but I'll back that up and explain to you in a moment exactly what I'm talking about. Good morning, Kathleen. How are you? It is super, super good to see you here. So there's 6 reasons why I have stopped setting goals. Sorry, four reasons. I've expanded them, but I'm going to go through 4 of the reasons why I stopped setting goals. And yeah, sorry, I'm having all kinds of trouble here broadcasting. 4 reasons why I stopped setting goals and reasons why you might want to consider doing the same. And I will introduce you to a new framework, a new paradigm, a different way of thinking about traditional goal setting. So the first reason I stopped setting goals is that traditional goals leave you open for failure. They, in fact, set you up for failure. And I know you're screaming at me right now, but Mike, failure is a good thing. This is how we learn. This is how we grow. Failure is a good thing. Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. If we're not failing at things, we're not probably trying enough things. The challenge with traditional goal setting is it tends to put the wrong things on the scorecard. So, for example, if my goal, early in my career, in my 20s, probably my first real solid financial goal was to hit six figures, was to make $100,000 a year. And the reality is, if I don't hit that goal, if I fail at achieving that goal, am I really a failure? Am I really a failure if I don't achieve that six-figure goal? And the answer is, of course not. And I'm not opposed to having materialistic goals, but I do think we need to change what's on the scorecard. So that's reason number one. Number two is what you think you want may not actually be what you want. So again, if we come back to that six-figure income, nobody really wants a six-figure income. What they want is what they think that income will be able to do for them. The house, the car, the boat, the toys, the trips, even all of those things are probably not your end desire. Probably what you're looking for is how those possessions will make you feel. So the question becomes, how do we reframe that so that we can get to the root of what we actually want and not be chasing these materialistic things that we think we want, that we think are going to give us the outcome of we want. So that's problem number two. Number three, traditional goals potentially blind us to other possibilities. So again, if I get hyper-focused on making that six-figure income, or if I want to have $1 million in the bank account and I become hyper-focused on building that bank account to, seven figures, I want to have $1 million in the bank account. If I get hyper-focused on that, again, what I want isn't necessarily $1 million sitting in the bank. What I want is the freedom that I think that might give me. And if I become hyper-focused on achieving that goal, that's seven figures in the bank, I could in fact move further and further away from freedom because I become a slave to reaching out and trying to achieve that goal. So traditional goals potentially blind us from seeing other possibilities. And number four, the last reason I'm going to touch on this morning, is that you may not like who you become in the process of achieving your goals. Again, if my blind focus is to earn six figures a year, to put $1 million away in the bank, I may end up taking some shortcuts to do that. I may end up making some decisions based on a commitment to that goal that don't align with who I actually want to be. And that becomes a problem. So this is where, again, I think that we often run into challenges when we look at goal setting. Jamie says, I've set goals last week and I'm still not able to keep them very well. Yes. I mean, that's the other thing. The reality is goals are these materialistic things. There's often not a really big driver behind them. They're want to haves, they're not must haves. So let's talk about a framework that replaces goal setting in the traditional sense. And I've talked about this before. Kathleen touched on it. I love what you said earlier about intention setting. And that's exactly it. So instead of setting goals, I now set three different things. And I have a framework that I use. I have a framework that we use within our Lifestyle by Design program. So any of the guys out there, if you are interested in signing up for the Lifestyle by Design program, you can do that. And we've got a new intake coming up this year. I got a couple of guys that will be joining as well. So let's talk about that different framework. The first is we set values. What are our values? How do we know each and every day that we're living our values? What is a mantra that we can create to bring us back to those values when we get off track? So our values become our North Star, our compass, those things that we base all of our decisions on. So again, when I'm chasing that six-figure income, if that six-figure income is my blind focus, I may be able to make some decisions, or I may decide to make some decisions that aren't necessarily in alignment with my values. If my values are integrity, empathy, and compassion, again, I could probably make some decisions pursuing an income that don't align with those values. I could take some shortcuts. I could cheat the system. And maybe it's not illegal, but maybe there are some ethical issues that I could subvert to make a quicker move towards achieving those goals. But again, that does not align with my values. So when I start with values, that becomes the key for any decision that I make each and every morning. Each and every morning when I sit down and I review my values, I create my questions that I can ask myself each and every day to know that I'm living my values. Again, that takes precedent over that outcome, that goal, that milestone at the end. And the second thing, which Kathleen touched on, and we touched on this a couple of days back, was intentions. When I set intentions rather than goals, that focuses much more on how I want to show up in the world and who I want to be rather than what I want to have. And I've talked about this before. It's one of my favorite quotes in my book. They can take away what you have, but they can never take away who you are. So focus on becoming more, not having more. And I think that's an important mindset shift for most of us. Oftentimes we look at this have being, what do I want to have? How do I go out and get those things that I want to have? And when we shift to intentions, it becomes much more about who do we want to be and how do we show up in this world. And then the last part, the third part of that framework, is setting milestones or goals. You can call them goals if you want, but I prefer to call them milestones because, again, it just shifts the focus from the having, the chasing, to the being. And again, I'm not opposed to having material things. Some of the milestones I have on my list are pretty substantial. I have some pretty lofty goals set out for me. I have some pretty big things that I want to accomplish in this world. So I don't have a problem setting milestones, setting goals, but they all have to align back to my values and my intentions. And the reality is, if I don't actually hit any of those goals, it doesn't fucking matter anymore, because as long as I'm in alignment with my values, as long as I'm in alignment with my intention, then the goals that I hit are going to be byproducts of that, and they may shift along the way. And I don't become blindly focused on the goal. I become blindly focused on my values and my intentions. And this is a much more powerful framework, a much more powerful way of doing that. So I actually, this is some of the stuff that we work through. And guys, if you're watching, Aaron, I saw you on here. This is a reminder. We got homework to do this week. Setting milestones for the year. Brainstorming and individual ones. But this is step 3 in the process. Step 1 is setting our values. Step 2 is creating those intentions, those who I want to be's and how I want to show up in this world. And then lastly, we set those milestones, those goals that we want to achieve. And again, it becomes much easier to remain focused on achieving those things when they are, in fact, in alignment with our values and our intentions. And those milestones just become little check marks along the way. And it makes it much easier to follow along, much easier to stick to those, rather than just creating this arbitrary list of things we want to have that may or may not be in alignment with who we want to be and may or may not be truly important in our life. This is a critical step. So my challenge for you this year is, where can you revisit the goal setting piece? Where can you reframe that into setting values, setting intentions, and setting milestones? So again, the entire self-help community has got it wrong, in my opinion. They've got it wrong. We always are taught to start with the goal at the end and then work backwards. But the reality is, oftentimes the goal isn't actually what we want. It's maybe a piece of what we want, or we think it's a piece of what we want, But when we start with the outcome and work backwards, that becomes problematic in that we may not live our values, we may not live our intentions. So let's make the goals, let's make the milestones secondary to values and intentions, not the primary. Not the primary. Again, we've always been taught to choose our goals, to use that SMART acronym: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. Again, I don't have a problem with that for milestones, for some of these things we want to hit along the way. But as a framework for life, I don't think it's a good one. In fact, I know it's not a good one because I lived it for 40 plus years of my entire life. And it was only when I stopped setting goals and switched the framework to values, intentions, and milestones that life really got good. And again, don't get me wrong, I hit a lot of those things. I hit that 6-figure goal by the time I was 25, 24, 25. I built and sold a multi-million-dollar company. I've run 100-mile ultra marathons. I've done lots of the things. I've got lots of the stuff. I've done the having. But the having isn't really all that satisfying. It's the being that becomes more satisfying. Anyways, my friend, that is my rant for today. I wanted to share that with you. Take a breath, take a pause. So let's talk a little bit about the future of this show. We are at episode, I think, like 185, something like that. And I started this when the pandemic sort of kicked in and I realized I wasn't going to be able to travel and do some of my speaking engagements. But I think doing this daily is maybe a little oversaturated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this back, this live show, to a weekly. And I'm going to look to have more guests on so that we can have more conversation and less monologue, because I think those are more valuable when I can get different perspective. You guys have listened to me and my perspective for 185 shows. It's now time to get some fresh perspective on here. Wish I had something to say, but my mind is blank. Well, you're here, and that's all that matters. Good morning, Michelle. I see Michelle was over on the website. So yeah, I'm going to scale these back a little bit and focus more on member-only content over at mikecameron.ca. So again, if you're not over at mikecameron.ca, please hop over there, join the community. It's completely free. If you're interested in doing deeper dive, either through one-on-one or group experience, shoot me a message and I will share with you some of the things that we've got cooking for 2021 and how you can become a part of that, because I would absolutely love to have you be a part of that. All right, my friend, as always, continue to make beautiful shit happen and have yourself a fantastic